Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our weekly Sunday morning Tanya class. We have concluded last week chapter 40. So today we will begin chapter 41. But as an introduction to chapter 41, let me say the following. The Tanya, in the Tanya, you can. There are 53 chapters in the first section of Tanya, and if you will, one can break down the Tanya in 5 sections. The 53 chapters in 5 sections. From chapter 1 to 17, the Alter Rebbe over there discusses the human soul, the two souls of a Jew, their makeup, their anatomy. Talks about Torah, talks about mitzvahs, talks about how one can reach a perfect service of Hashem through contemplating and meditating on the greatness of God to produce and to create a love in his heart, a passion for Torah, mitzvah, passion for God. I'm just doing this very briefly. In chapters 18 to 25, the next 8 chapters, the Alter Rebbe discusses the Jew who's unable to create a love in his heart by understanding and meditating on the greatness of Hashem. So he says there's another method by which one can have a perfect service, and that is because every Jew has within him an innate love. He already has it within him. Deep in the recesses of his heart and his soul, he has a love for Hashem. All he has to do is reveal it and bring it out from the hidden to the revealed state. And in those 8 chapters, the Alter Rebbe discusses the essence of the Jewish soul and the relationship of God with the world, the unity of God, the oneness of God, and so on. Very profound subjects there. And we went through all of this, of course, when we went through those chapters. Talks about the self-sacrifice of a Jew, where that comes from. In chapter 26 through 34, the next 9 chapters, the Alter Rebbe discusses how important it is for a Jew to be always in a happy, uplifted mood and disposition. And that melancholy is the biggest enemy of a Jew's service to God. You cannot be in that kind of situation. You'll lose the battle against the evil inclination if you're not happy. And he goes through chapter after chapter in those 9 chapters to tell us how one can find and be happy, although you may find reasons to be unhappy. You have challenges, you have sad things going on in your life. Nevertheless, the Alter Rebbe says, even though you can be happy, and you must be happy. And if not, you're going to lose the battle. Chapter 35 through 40, which is the last 6 chapters that we learn, Alter Rebbe discusses the purpose why God created the world. To begin with, why did he create the world? What he wants from a Jew? And how we have to serve Hashem not only by doing the mitzvahs, but we also have to have the proper intention and kavanah. We talked about that at great length. The proper intention meaning to infuse your service and your commitment to God with love, with passion, with excitement, and so on. And he said that if someone serves Hashem without the kavanah, he just does the mitzvahs, without the proper intention, then he compared it to a bird that doesn't have wings. The bird is a bird. The bird is alive. It's a kosher bird. There's no problem. It's a kosher bird, but it's a sad situation. A bird that the wings are clipped off is a terrible situation. But the bird is there. It's alive. a mitzvah, Torah, learning Torah, doing a mitzvah without the proper intention, the passion that's supposed to be infused in it, lacks the wings. What are the wings? The kavanah, the intention, are the wings that allow for the mitzvah to rise to the higher world. What do I mean by that? When a yid does a mitzvah, we don't see it, but something extraordinary happens in the higher world. There's a lot, there's energy, spiritual energy that is revealed, that is unleashed. And when the mitzvah is done without the kavanah, without the proper intention, without the love and the passion, then the mitzvah remains down here because it doesn't have wings to rise to the higher worlds. And that lacks that dynamic. And that's why kavanah is so important. From chapter 41 through 53 till the end, the Alter Rebbe is a new section, where the Alter Rebbe talks about many different topics, but most importantly, he talks about the idea that, and he begins with that in chapter 41, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I believe. He talks about what does it mean and how to develop a real love for Hashem, and how important that is. And there's different grades, different levels within that. And we'll start chapter 41 at this time, okay? It's on page 205 in your bilingual edition. And this is an important chapter, as all of them are. But there's some very, very important fundamental subjects that are discussed here. So let's go into it. One must, however, constantly bear in mind the beginning of the service and its core and root. You have to always remember, you have to always bear in mind and keep at the top of your mind what is the beginning, the core and root of serving Hashem. What is that? Now I should mention, I want to tell you a story. As we all know, the Alter Rebbe wrote the Tanya. It took him about 20 years to write this Tanya. He finished the Tanya in the year, it was printed in the year 1796. So he started, he finished it around then, so he started in 1775, 1776, writing the Tanya. And the Alter Rebbe, they told the story that the Alter Rebbe was once in his room sitting by his table, and his brother walked in, and the Alter Rebbe was in a state of trance. He was in a trance. He was not in this world at the time. He was holding a pen in his right hand, and his left hand he held his head up, like was leaning his head on his left hand. And he didn't realize that the Alter Rebbe, that his brother had walked into the room. He was totally oblivious to it because he was somewhere else. And his brother waited for about an hour till the Alter Rebbe came out of it. And the Alter Rebbe told him that he's been already 3 weeks thinking about a certain word, and he's writing the Tanya. He was in the middle of the work, and he's been thinking already 3 weeks on a word in Tanya, whether he should write a vav as a prefix to the word or not. He was contemplating for 3 weeks already whether he should add a vav, which like when you say here, the words over here, let's say, of the service, and to constantly bear in mind the beginning of the service and its core and root. Okay? He could have written the beginning of the service, its core and root. He didn't have to say and its core and root. You don't have to write twice and. So he was contemplating for 3 weeks whether you should write that extra vav, which means and. And the Alter Rebbe said to him that when you write that, to write the book in writing the book for the regular and for the Beinani, the regular Jew, you can spend 6 weeks on one letter. The Jewish people are worthy that we should spend 6 weeks whether to add a letter or not. And we have by tradition that on this one letter, in these words, in chapter 41, that one vav, he spent a month or more contemplating non-stop whether to put in that vav or not. I just want to point this out because it's these words. It's right now, this is what we're learning, that extra vav there, and how meticulous this Tanya is. How meticulous this book is, and how every word is exact. And I mean, we're not just talking, every writer tries to write his work, whether they're writing a paper, whether they're writing a book. They're trying to, you edit it and you go again and you have people look it over. Did you write it right? The syntax, this, that. Every responsible writer is going to write a book and whatever he writes, that it should be proper. But this is completely on a different level. The Alter Rebbe went through the world, all the spiritual, he went through everything to make this. It's like, that's why it's called the Bible of Chassidism. Because just like in the Bible, every letter is exact, right? The 5 books of Moses, every letter is exact. The Tanya's at that is like that. So I just wanted to point that out. That when you learn Tanya, even though we're learning it in English, we have to appreciate what is in these words, what's going on over here. Anyway, so let's read from the beginning again. One must, however, constantly bear in mind the beginning of the service and its core and root. What is the core and the root and the beginning of the Avodas Hashem, of serving God? Where does it begin? What's the yesod? What's the foundation? By this is meant that although fear is the root of depart from evil, and love is the root of do good, Alter Rebbe explained in chapter 4 already the following. There are in the Torah that God gave us, there are many mitzvahs, 613 to be exact. Of the 613, there are 248 positive commandments and 365 commandments where Hashem says don't do. So there's 248 things that we're told to do, and 365 things we're told you're not allowed to do. So for example, we're told to put on tefillin every day. We're told to put a mezuzah on our door. We're told to eat matzah on Passover. We're told to eat in a sukkah on Sukkot, and so on, many such. Those are the do's. And then there are the mitzvahs we're told you're not allowed to. You're not allowed to lie. You're not allowed to eat pork. You're not allowed to eat milk and meat together. Those are the don't do's, the things you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to eat chametz on Pesach, and so on. There are 248 positives and 365 negatives. So the Alter Rebbe said in the beginning of the Tanya in chapter 4 that in order to properly fulfill the 248 positive commandments, for that you need to arouse within your heart a love of Hashem. When you love someone, you want to be together with them. And if you love Hashem, what do you do when you have a feeling, a love for Hashem? Let's take forget Hashem. Let's talk for another human being. You have a love for your spouse, right? The person has a love for their children, the spouse and children. So what do they want as a result of that love? They want to be with their children. They want to be with their spouse, right? You want to spend time with them, being under the same roof. You want to be there with them, right? And so if you want that, what do you do in order to express that love? You make a trip and you go visit your children, and you buy them a gift, and so on and so forth, where you become closer and closer to them. That's how you become one and attach to each other even more. How do you express your love for Hashem? You love Hashem. Okay, so now how do I get close to Him? A mitzvah. By doing the mitzvah, exactly. Right. By doing the mitzvah, that's how you become one with Him. You cleave to Hashem by doing the mitzvah. When you put on tefillin, you are one with Hashem. When you put on tzitzis, you are one with Hashem. When you eat a seder, you make a seder on Passover night, you're one with Hashem.
But not only that, Rabbi, you please yourself at the same time.
Also, that's a byproduct. But that's the byproduct. Right. Yeah, true. There's nothing greater for yourself also than doing mitzvahs, for sure. Well, every time when you love your spouse and you want to be with them, so that you're getting a benefit, you want to be with them. You're enjoying that. You're right, what you're saying. So how do you cleave to Hashem? Through mitzvahs. So the Alter Rebbe said in chapter 40, so if you, in chapter 4, that a yid that wants to, we have so many mitzvahs that we have to fulfill. What's the way to fulfill the mitzvahs? By arousing a love for Hashem. When you love Him, you're going to want to do the mitzvahs. It's going to motivate you doing things for Hashem, just like your own spouse. When you love them, you're motivated to do things for them, do the things that they want. What about the 365 negative commandments? What emotion helps you refrain from doing the things you're not allowed to do? Fear. I'm fearful of Hashem I'm afraid to separate. What happens when you violate a commandment, when you do something Hashem said not to do? You become separate from Him. Not only are you not becoming closer to Him, you're getting further from Him. So what motivates you to not ever want to do a sin? When you're aroused, when you reveal within your heart a certain awe and fear from Hashem. Let's go back to the example of a spouse. You know there are certain things that your spouse doesn't want you to do. Right? So why won't you do them? Because it's your spouse that doesn't want you to do them. But what's the motivator? What's the emotion that motivates you to really refrain from doing those things, even though you would like to do those things? The fear of separation, the fear of losing, the fear of threatening the relationship with your spouse. Right? The same thing with God. What's the emotional motivator to keep you from refraining from doing those sins? The fear of separation from Him, the fear of Hashem. So the love motivates the 248 positive commandments, and fear motivates you and keeps you from doing the negative. Got it, yeah? Mm-hmm. Let's see it in his words. The first line on the right column. By this is meant that although fear is the root of depart from evil, and love is the root of do good, nevertheless, says the Alter Rebbe, that's not enough. It is not sufficient to awaken the love alone to do good. It's not enough to awaken a love in your heart in order to get you to do mitzvahs. You have to, there's something else you need. What is it? But one must at least first arouse the innate fear which lies hidden in the heart of every Jew, not to rebel against the Supreme King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He, as has been stated above. In other words, even though we're saying that in order that the emotional motivator for positive mitzvahs is love, and the emotional feeling you need to refrain from sinning is fear, the Alter Rebbe says what you need in order to do the positive commandments, you need not just love, you also need to first arouse within your heart the natural fear of Hashem. In other words, fear is also needed. You also need fear to motivate positive commandments. Why is that? Why is love not enough? You understand what's going on here? You understand what he's saying? Why is this? Why is love not enough? So here I want to point out the difference between how we serve Hashem. What does it mean to serve Hashem? What does the word serve mean?
Well, to do what he asks you to do.
That is true, but there's more to that. There's more to the word serve. Serve comes from the word servant. What is a servant?
Who waits on somebody.
Who?
Who waits on somebody. Who caters to somebody.
It's more than caters. It's like a servant in your house. When you have a servant in your house, it's not your son. Your son is not going to be a servant. Your daughter is not going to be a servant. A servant is like a slave. Not a slave like, slave the bad, but a servant, someone that serves his master, right? You have a master and you have a servant. How does and when Hashem says, so you have two things. You have a servant and you have a child. What is the difference between a servant and a child? The servant does everything the master wants him to do, right? But why does he do it? Because he fears his master. He doesn't love his master. He doesn't have any attachment to his master in that way. He happens to be a slave to his master, a servant. Let's call him a servant, because the word slave has a bad connotation. But a servant is a servant. Why does he serve his master? He's afraid. Let's say our servants today. Do we have servants today? Not like we don't have slaves, but we have people that work for us. You pay them, right? Why do they show up to work every day to serve you? They're afraid if they don't, they'll lose their job. They're afraid of you. They're afraid you're going to kick them out of the job, or you won't pay them. You'll take off the dock from their paycheck. It's fear. It's not love. They're not loving you. That's why they're coming to work. Right? That's what it is. A servant serves his master more out of fear than out of love. How does a child serve his father and mother?
With love.
With love. A child is not a servant. They're two different things. A child does for his parents because he loves them. A servant does for his master because he fears him. Is that true?
Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's true.
Yes.
When Hashem says in the Torah, "Va'avaditem es Hashem Elokeichem," He wants us to serve Him, using the word "va'avaditem," which means a servant. That means He's saying to us, I don't just want you to do for me like a son and child does for their parent. I want you to be my servant. What's the connotation here? What does God want? What is He saying here? What He's saying is, I want you to serve me like a servant.
Actually, Rabbi, fear is probably greater than love.
Why do you say that? I'm interested to know. You're right, by the way, but I want to know why you say that.
If you're afraid of something, you know the outcome, somehow,
You'll do it better.
I don't know how to put it in words, but that's, that's how what I feel.
Intimidation.
Right.
You're very right. You're right. You're correct.
But this fear we have of Hashem is also respect.
Awe.
Yeah.
You can call it awe. However you want to call it. It's awe, fear. It's related to the idea of, it's a different kind of emotion. It's not a love. It's not love.
No.
It's a different emotion. It's awe, respect. You're awe-stricken, right? It's a different emotion. It's not love. It's a different emotion. Hashem wants that. He wants us to serve. He wants us to be His servants. Avodaiheim, Hashem says, they are my servants. There's an old Hasidic saying says that like this: love, ave is geschmacker. Ave is more enjoyable. Love is more joyous, more enjoyable. But fear, yira is gesinter. Yira, fear is healthier.
It's true. Why is fear healthier?
Because you're going to be more.
You're going to stay on track.
When you love, you can love and violate the person's will as well at the same time. When people say, let me give you the extreme example. When a spouse is caught, not being loyal to their spouse, nicht nebach, it happens. A lot of them say to their spouse when it's exposed, you should know I love you I love you. I love you. It didn't mean anything. My love is for you. That was just, And they're not lying. They're not lying. They love their spouse. But they don't fear the spouse. They love them, but they're lacking respect and awe and fear. Had they feared their spouse, they would never have done what they did. Love is not enough. Love is not enough. You have to have a sense of fear. That's what Hashem says. I want you to serve me. I don't just want you to be my son who loves me. It's not enough. He wants the service of a servant. Because and the Alter Rebbe says over here, that is the beginning, the core and root of divine service. Is that element of fear that you have to have before you even approach anything.
It's easier to deal with love than it is with fear.
That is 100% true. I just said that.
Yeah.
Love is gishmaka.
Without a doubt.
Is more
Right.
enjoyable,
Right.
but fear is healthier.
Right.
When you have yirat shamayim, fear of heaven, you're much healthier than if you only have ahavas shamayim, love of heaven.
Such a big difference in feeling, Rabbi, out of fear versus love.
It's true. It's two different emotions.
It's two different feelings.
100%.
Yeah.
You need both. Don't get me wrong. You need both.
Without a doubt.
But the beginning, the yesod, the foundation is fear. Build on that. On that you can build. Let's see it in the Alter Rebbe's words. By this is meant that although, the first line again, that although fear is the root of depart from evil, and love of do good, in other words, in order to do good, you really, really only need love. He says, no, nevertheless, it is not sufficient to awaken the love alone to do good, but one must at least first arouse the innate fear which lies hidden in the heart of every Jew, not to rebel against the Supreme King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He, as has been stated above. So that this fear shall manifest itself in his heart, or at least in his mind. Sometimes it's not easy to arouse a fear of God in the heart. So at least you have in your intellect, at least you know in your mind that Hashem is something to be feared and have awe of Him, and at least that you have. So maybe in your heart you're not fearing, but you don't have the feeling in the heart, but at least in the mind you do. That is a crucial step one. This means that he should at least contemplate in his thought, listen to these words, he should at least contemplate in his thought on the greatness of the blessed infinite God, Ein Sof, and on his kingship, which extends to all worlds, both higher and lower. Hashem's kingship extends everywhere. He's the higher worlds, the lower worlds. He's the king of everything. He's the creator of everything. And that he fills all worlds and encompasses all worlds. These are Kabbalistic terms to refer to Hashem's different energies, different relationships with the world. There's the level of Hashem that fills the world. What fills the world means that's God as He tailors His energy, His creative energy, to be invested in every single creation according to its parameters and so on. In other words, there's a specific godly life force that is in this table. There's a specific godly life force that is in a tree. There's a specific godly life force that's in this cup. Everyone is different. And that's why this ends up being a cup, and that ends up being a tree, and this ends up being a stone. And end up being human beings. The life force is tailored and invested, enclosed in every single creation individually. That's, of course, a much lower level of Hashem, that He's already able to be so diluted where it can be invested and enclosed in individual particular creations. Like your soul, right? The soul powers are invested in your body, right? Your soul is enclosed in your body. So there's the general soul power that makes your body alive, but then there's individual parts of the soul that are enclosed in individual body parts. In the eye, there's a specific life force for the eye. In the nose, and the mouth, there's many different aspects. So the part of the soul that is enclosed in the individual organs of the body fitting that organ is, of course, a much lower level of soul than the soul that is more as an encompassing level, which just gives the body one general life force. You understand? So the same thing is with Hashem. Kabbalah talks about two basic life forces of Hashem, creative life, or there's the general encompassing light that encompasses the worlds from above, so to say, where all the worlds are accepting the same amount of energy, the same life, and therefore it doesn't include itself in the world itself. Of course, that's a much higher level of Hashem. And then there's the Mamali Kalama, the God that fills the world, meaning He encloses Himself and is tailored according to the needs and specific parameters of every single individual creation. And that's, of course, a much lower level. So He's saying you have to contemplate that this God, let's read it again. This means that he should at least contemplate in his thought on the greatness of the blessed Ein Sof and on His kingship, which extends to all worlds, both higher and lower, and that He fills all the worlds and encompasses all worlds. Those 2 points, that's 2 things I just mentioned. As is written, do I not fill heaven and earth? He's always everywhere. Yet, and here's the key words, yet He leaves both of the higher and lower worlds, and uniquely bestows His kingdom upon His people Israel in general, and upon him, meaning me, the person who's contemplating this in particular. As indeed a man is obliged to say, for my sake was the world created. Listen to these words. This is profound stuff. The Alter Rebbe is saying of it, God is great. He fills all the world. He's creator of everything, and He's everywhere. Yet He leaves all that. That's not His interest. He has no interest in the upper world. He has no interest in the lower world. What is His ultimate interest?
You.
He wants to have a relationship with the Jewish people, and more specifically with you, the individual. That's all He wants. He's interested just in you. And as a person, the Talmud tells us that a person has to say and feel and know that and have the attitude that only for me was the world created. The whole entire world was created just for me. The Gemara asks the question, why, when God created everything in the 6 days of creation, did He create everything in pairs except for man? Man He created singular. When He created animals, every animal was created instantly, male and female. Together, pairs. Whereas when it came to the human being, He created Adam alone. No woman, no pairs. Only later did He create Chava, Eve. So the Mishnah asks, why did He do that? And the answer was given that He wanted man, and not only Adam, but every single one of us, to know that we were created alone, and it was for us that the world was created. For me, the individual. For me, the whole world was created. Now that sounds like an arrogant statement or an arrogant attitude. But it's not arrogant, because when we say, for me, the world is created, it means it's dependent on me. Not that I should be able to therefore have all the possessions of the world, it's all mine. On the contrary, I'm responsible to maintain this world and fulfill its ultimate purpose. On me, my shoulders, the whole thing is dependent. Most of us say, I'm just a little nobody here. The big tzaddikim, the big people, they're the ones that are They'll take care of God's purpose. I'm nothing. That is the biggest, that's the Yetzer Hara talking. That's the evil inclination. The truth is, the whole entire world was created for me, meaning I'm responsible for the ultimate purpose of God to become fulfilled. I am the one that can make it happen. And Hashem wants a relationship not with 16 million Jews. That's true. But more specifically, he wants a relationship with me. That's all he's interested in. He leaves everything above. He's not interested in the higher world, Seviv Kolamad, encompassing light, nothing. He wants a relationship with me. Do you understand the power of that? That's all he's concerned about is me. And it's true. You were created an individual. And the contemplation continues. And on his part, meaning the person contemplating, he accepts his kingdom upon himself, that he be king over him, to serve him and to do his will in all kinds of servile work. That means Hashem wants it, that he wants me, the individual. He's not interested in anything else, anyone else, nothing. It's all me. And I accept, and I want this relationship also. And I accept Hashem's kingdom upon myself. And behold, he has to think further. And behold, God stands over him. And the whole world is full of his glory. Right this second, God is right here standing in my presence, looking at every single thing I do and speak and think. The whole world is full of his glory, and he looks upon him, meaning this person, and searches his reins and heart. He knows exactly what's going on in your heart, in your mind, to see if he is serving him as is fitting. Therefore, he must serve in his presence with awe and fear, like one standing before the king. If you had this contemplation once a day, you went through a 5-minute thought process of just these words, it's probably going to have an effect on you. If you knew that the only interest God has in this world is you, that's all he wants. He has no other interest. He wants to have a relationship with me, not with us, with me. With all my shortcomings, with all my mishigas. He wants a relate. He leaves all the upper world. It's all was created that he should be able to have a relationship with this individual human being. And you think that that it's each person thinking about his own. And that God is standing above us and searching our inner thoughts and our inner feelings. He knows he's standing right here. He's standing at this moment right over my head, looking to see how I'm going to be, how I'm going to act, how I'm going to think. That's not going to affect that you should have a sense of awe. You're standing before the king. Let's go a few lines further. One must meditate profoundly and at length on this thought according to the capacity of apprehension of his brain and thought, and according to the time available to him, before he occupies himself with Torah or a commandment, such as prior to putting on his talis or tefillin, his phylacteries. Alter Rebbe is saying that this is the thought that we should have before we do our mitzvah, before we learn Torah. For example, in the morning before we put on our talis and tefillin, we should stop for 2 minutes and think this. And if you have more than 2 minutes, think more than 2 minutes. And if you have more capacity in your brain, you have more brain power, think about it even more. On a higher level of thought, and so on and so forth, expound on it and so on. That's how you bring out from the latent part of your heart the natural fear that we have for Hashem. We have it. We don't have to create it because it's there already. We have a neshama. The fact that you have a Jewish neshama, that comes along with natural fear for Hashem. So all you have to do is bring it out from its latent, its hidden state into the revealed state. You don't have to create anything. And then he continues. The contemplation continues. He should also reflect how the light of the blessed Ein Sof, meaning God, the infinite light of Hashem, which encompasses all worlds and pervades all worlds, like we said before, right? Which is identical with the higher will. What he means by this is, we spoke about this many times. What is Torah and Mitzvahs? Torah and Mitzvahs is God's inner will, His essential will. Right? That's really what He wants in life, in the world. I gave you the example of a business, right? When a person opens up a business. What does he want? What he wants to, so he buys a fax machine and he buys desks and he buys paper clips and pens and everything you need in an office, right? What is he, when the person sees the owner buying all these things and he asks him, do you want to have pens? Yeah. The answer is, of course. If he didn't want it, he wouldn't buy it. But is that really what he wants? Is that his inner will? He's interested in pens, he's interested in desks, he's interested in fax machines. What does he really want?
Make money.
Make money. The profit at the end of the day, that's the real inner will in this whole enterprise. With Hashem and creation, it's the same thing. There's the Chetzenius Haratzon, the outer external will, and then there's the inner will. When in the business, when the buying of the machines and all the things you need for a business, that's the outer will, the external will. He wants it, but it's an external will. It's not the real will. The real will is the profit at the end that this business is going to produce. Same thing with creation. God has the inner and external will. The external will is all of creation. The upper world, the lower worlds, everything you see, that's all the external will. Where's the dollar at the end of it? Where's the profit? Torah and mitzvahs. When a Yid does Torah and mitzvahs, he learns Torah and it fulfills the mitzvahs. That is the profit. That's the inner will. So what is, so when you have tefillin, a sukkah, whatever the mitzvah may be, a mezuzah, that's the inner will of Hashem. So let's see in his words now. He should also reflect on how the light of the blessed Ein Sof, which encompasses all worlds and pervades all worlds, which is identical with his higher will, is clothed in the letters and wisdom of the Torah and in the tzitzis fringes, and the phylacter is the tefillin. Hashem's inner will is enclosed. That's where it can be found. Where? In those tefillin, in those tzitzis, in that Torah, in the Torah he's learning. He's giving these examples because he said you should think about these ideas before you put on your talis, before you put on your tefillin, and before you learn Torah. But you should think about this before any mitzvah you do. But he's giving the daily things out that he gave 3 examples of learning Torah, putting on talis, and putting on tefillin. But it's true with every mitzvah. So you have to think that the Hashem, which is the encompasser of all world, this light of Hashem, and all this inner will is, where's his inner will? In the mitzvah. The mitzvah that you're going to now put on, the tefillin that you're going to put on, in that tefillin is Hashem's inner will. His most important, essential will is there. And that's going to be now enveloping you. You're going to be now in touch with that inner will of Hashem. That energy, that deepest energy of Hashem.
You know, Rabbi, can I mention something?
Sure.
How does a person deal with, let's say, a priest or a rabbi, and they pray every day, and all of a sudden the prayers turn to things that are not proper? How does that person deal with that?
What do you mean the prayer turns
where
to
he's
something?
having a split personality. What I mean by
Start
that,
thinking of bad things.
let's take a priest with all the sexual abuse that's going on. Let's think of the rabbi that goes to jail for stealing money. You've read about that also. how does that person deal with that? You know, I mean, I guess the fear is not as great as
You didn't think about this.
right. I mean, you know, how does somebody live with that? That's my point.
People can live with a lot of hypocrisy, and people go through life that way, as we know. Very many people live that way. You're giving extreme examples, but most people live a hypocrisy just at some level. They live with just contradictions, you know. They preach one thing and they do something else. How many of us do that? We do that all the time, really, if you think about it.
I'm talking about
We tell our kids,
a man who believes in his religion.
why do you have to go to religion? Let's talk parents and children.
Because that's
No,
such a powerful thing.
It is
religion.
powerful, but let's talk about the average person who's not a rabbi or a priest or whatever. He's a father, a mother.
Right.
He teaches his kids to live a certain way, right? And he's over and over and tells his kids, you have to be a moral person, you have to be a mensch.
Right.
You're not allowed to say a lie that comes. You're not allowed to be dishonest and so on. And then the father, in his own life, comes to business. He'll be able to swindle here, won't be that honest there. He lives a contradiction.
Or
He's
not
telling
truthful to his wife.
whatever. Maybe not that extreme, but he's not. He's telling his kids one thing, and he does a little bit different.
Right.
How many people do that?
Let's
A big
hope-
number. A big number.
I would say
A little bit. We're all. Hey, let me tell you. You tell your kids, don't be on your phone so much. Right?
Right.
What do you and how much? And the father who tells that to his kid, the mother who tells that to his kid, is on the phone.
Constantly.
We don't. Sometimes we rationalize this in our own mind. I have to tell my kids the truth. What I am is a separate thing. I have to work on myself, but I have to at least tell my kids the truth. And they're not wrong, by the way. What are you going to say? You shouldn't tell your kid not to be on the phone. But we live that contradiction. So the rabbi also lives sometimes a contradiction. He goes to jail. It's terrible, terrible. How do they live with themselves? I don't know how they live with themselves. We all live a little bit like that, no? When someone steals and goes to jail, that's like the big story. Well, a little bit, we're all guilty of this. We preach a little bit different than what we say.
Do as I say, not as I do.
That's right. Do as I say, not as I do. But that's hypocrisy. Why shouldn't you do as you say and not as you do? And why shouldn't you follow that?
Saying, Rabbi, if you turn everybody inside out, you're going to find a little bit of that
Yes.
inside somebody.
No. Let's be honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
Do we always act what we preach? Probably not. So we can live with it because it's on small fire by us. It's simmering. A little here, a little infraction here. Most of us can live with little infractions here and there. We would never go and rob a bank. We would never go and defraud, do things that are really outlawed, real stealing and real criminal behavior, for which you can go to jail. But how many people will say a lie? They won't be so honest. We allow ourselves to live with small infractions that we think are small. Some people take it to the next level. They live with big infractions until they're caught, and then when they're caught, they regret it. And then they do tshuva for real, or it's too late for them. Who knows?
It's like when I was in Poland and I went to Auschwitz, and they showed a movie, before the war and during the war with the Germans, and I'll never forget this. That the commander of Auschwitz, his wife, during this movie made a comment that the best days of her life were while her husband was the commander of Auschwitz.
Yes.
Somebody deal with that.
This is a whole different psychological. This is something that needs to be studied for many, many years. How these people became such sadists and such cruel individuals. There's studies on this. This is already a deep psychological phenomenon that we can never understand such cruelty, and that these people really hated these Jews. They would know. They really saw this.
How do you get to hate somebody like that?
That's a good question.
That's the part that puzzles me.
I don't know. I don't either know. It starts with small hatreds.
Yeah.
By the way, it doesn't start with a major hatred. It starts small hatred. And that's not checked. It goes to bigger. A small lie turns into a big lie.
Yeah,
A big
whole
lie
country became
starts.
that way.
That's how it is.
You know,
This
when
is
you
the
speak for
foundation.
yourself, you say to yourself, how do you get to hate somebody like that? I mean, really, I mean, it's...
Yeah. Let's try to move on here.
Conditional response. You learn it and it's reinforced.
Where are we? So the godly will is enclosed in the letters and wisdom of the Torah and the tzitzis, fringes, and the phylacteries, and through his study or donning these latter, he demeaning the tefillin and the tzitzis, he draws over himself his God's blessed light that is over the portion of godliness from above. In other words, over his soul, which is a part of Hashem above. God now is literally drawn within this person on his soul, which is a part of Hashem from above, which is within his body, that it may be absorbed and nullified in his blessed light. So if you had this thought process every time you did a mitzvah, even once a day, that will go a very long way. That will, but you have to just, it's not enough to just have a fleeting thought. You need to really think about it for real. I'll tell you why. Because it's very easy to think about that bagel and develop an interest in the bagel, or if it's spoiled, to develop a rejection to the bagel. Because you see it. So it's concrete. When we're talking about God, which is abstract for us at least, we don't see it, it's a little bit out, it's not, we don't see it with our eyes. So you have to really think this over and over and over to make it real in your life. So it's not suddenly that it's a 2-minute contemplation. If you have 2 minutes, then do 2 minutes. But it takes a little bit of, really connecting to this truth. And to really understand God is right here, and He's the King, and He leaves everything. This is a beautiful thought, by the way. He has no interest in anything except for me. That's all, the whole reason He created this world, is to be in a relationship with me. And it's no joke, by the way. It's not a falsehood. The Alter Rebbe is not saying fancy words just to get you excited. It's the truth. That's what He wants. He wants a relationship with you. For real. And He's standing right above you and thinking about you now. Now, of course, when you know that, you're going to respond in kind. I want the relationship back. I want that. I want to do my part. And then you think about the fact that He is. You do this before you put on tefillin. And when you think about the tefillin and talis or any mitzvah you do, that Hashem's inner dimension is in those tefillin, His inner will, His most essential desire is in those tefillin. And that's now going to become part of your experience. You're going to draw that upon yourself. There will be an awe. There will be some fear. There will be a sense of trepidation. In a good way. Not that you're scared of Him. In awe of Him. We'll go further next week. It's 10:30, so we'll stop here. But this continues.
Rabbi, I got Becky's coming here instead of Tuesday. If you're available in 15 minutes, could we walk around? Yeah.
1 second. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a wonderful week. And we'll see you next Sunday at 9:30.